take long for the group to get back to the base, though convincing her father to let them bring the prisoner inside for interrogation was the harder part. The surviving bandit tried to resist their attempts to break him until Tahir threatened to castrate him, and Feridun claimed he would eat him alive if he didn't talk. Obviously, Feridun wouldn't actually eat him, but he needed to show that he was not a dragon for show, and had to, in a sense, bluff his way into getting some information. The bandit leader immediately acquiesced after hearing this, but not before cursing at them for ruining his chances at gaining Dahak's favor. As for where the meeting would take place, it would happen in Istakiri, given how there were slave imports happening there, as previously witnessed by the group earlier. With Arnavaz being kept safe in the Frumi tribe's secret base, the group decided to strike while they had the chance. Feridun contacted his mysterious allies that he mentioned, especially after they informed him of another slave auction happening soon. The plan was that Soraya, Yasika, Gordafarid, and Tahir would sneak in the city and pretend to be captured slaves. Though in Tahir's case, he was to pretend that he was merely a Gryphon who was going to be killed for meat, while Nasir and Rostam had to pretend to be slave catchers, but not before forcing the bandit leader to accompany them in order to sell the act well. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the city, especially since they were in a hurry and needed to find out what the next stage of Dahak's plans were. Okay, so does everyone know the plan? Gordafarid asked in utmost seriousness. Yes, Tahir said as he tried to get himself more comfortable with the makeshift leash he had on him. We get in the area where the auction is going to take place, find out where Dahak is going to strike next, and report back to the base, but not before rescuing the slaves there and taking down Dahak's supporters. You know this isn't going to work, right? The bandit leader said in a snide tone. I can still rat you guys out and get that reward. Or you can simply stay quiet, and maybe we won't consider castrating you for that comment. How is that for a good deal? Rostam warned, gripping the bandit's shoulder tightly. The fact that everyone had unamused glares directed towards him didn't help either, hence why the bandit decided to wisely shut his mouth. You will lead us to where the slave auction will take place and assist us in meeting Dahak. That is, if you don't want to end up dying painfully and slowly. Tahir growled with his fangs baring from his beak. This was enough to make the bandit leader gulp nervously and force himself to comply before gesturing to the direction where the slave auction building was located within Istakiri. The group then began heading towards the building while trying not to catch the attention of the people within the city. Some gazed upon them with surprise, especially considering that Soraya, Yasika, and Gordafarid were wearing slave outfits, whereas Tahir was kept bound by a leash with a muzzle barely wrapped around his beak, even if he could still talk and breathe through it. Rostam and Nasir wore the bandit garbs they got from the corpses of the late bandits that they killed earlier, which the bandit leader was most assuredly not approving of, while keeping the captured girls in ropes to prevent them from escaping, or at least from breaking free and blowing their cover. Some of the folks living in Istakiri couldn't help but stare at them either in pity, disgust, fear, or indifference, which made Soraya feel very uncomfortable, as something like this would never have been tolerated in Bahar. It also didn't help that some of the men in the city ogled at the females in their outfits, which weren't too risque, but still showed a lot more skin than normal. When Tahir took notice of this, he growled at the men staring at them, scaring them into backing off and going back to their business. Where is the building exactly? Rostam asked the bandit leader tensely, wanting to get out of the city as soon as possible. It should be over there, he revealed. Keep going straight until you see a tall and wide mansion with 4 tall watchtowers at the top. It has a pristine white marble texture that should stand out compared to the many other luxurious buildings that reside here, which hide its darkest secrets. As for who owns the building, it is someone who works directly for Dahak and answers to him. She goes by different names, but from what I can recall, her name is Sudabe, and she's the one in charge of the slave trafficking systems in Avesta. Have you met her before? Nasir asked cautiously. Only once, but that was it, the bandit leader revealed. She is quite the beauty, with a silver tongue that could seduce and persuade anyone with a weak-willed mind, especially if they are men. She is also very much willing to use her feminine wiles on anyone, and even convince females to serve as sex slaves to men, or to Dahak especially. You're serious? Nasir asked in horror and disgust. Yes, I am, the bandit leader confirmed with a nod. And once she sees that you guys brought the princess and the Gryphon to her doorsteps, chances are she's gonna be rewarded with a night in Dahak's bedchamber, given how lustful and power-hungry she is. Please do not say that in front of us, Rostam gagged, with the others sharing similar discomfort and disgust. Say, are you okay, Yasuka? Soraya asked with worry over her friend's fearful expression. You don't look so good. I'm scared, Yasuka admitted with fear in her tone, trembling with anxiety and wrapping her arms around her body in shame. I'm not used to wearing an outfit like this, even if it's for a secret mission. It's rather immodest, if not degrading for me, and I worry that I may end up catching unwanted attention from others because of it. Don't worry, the sooner we get information regarding Dahak, the quicker we can go back home and change out of these dresses, Soraya assured Yasuka, holding her friend's hand for comfort. If it makes you feel better, I don't particularly like this outfit either. Even so, it's better than standing naked like some of the female slaves do in other auctions. That is true, Yasuka agreed reluctantly. Even so, what if Dahak is actually there or comes later? I don't think we can take him on with the forces we have right now. We'll figure something out, Gordified assured the Sky Nun. Right now, we have to focus on the mission and get the info we need for the rebellion. Just stick with us and we'll be fine. Thanks, guys, Yasuka said in a grateful tone. Okay, let's do this. Atta girl, Gordified replied in a proud tone, lightly patting her shoulder. After a bit more walking and having to pass by many different yet equally luxurious buildings, though some of them were rather garish and impractical in design, at least in Tahir's opinion, they arrived at the building where the infamous Surabe resided. As it was described earlier, it had a tall and wide shape with 4 watchtowers on top. It was also a milky white color due to its marble exterior glimmering in the sunlight. Of course, the group knew better since they could sense that something was amiss about this building given the sinister aura it radiated. Well, this is the place, the bandit leader stated. I'll go to the front entrance and see if I can convince her to let us in. Okay, but I'm coming with you just in case, Rostam said firmly as he followed after the bandit leader, much to his annoyance. The two of them approached the front entrance with the bandit leader grabbing the front entrance's kubet knocker and banging. A few minutes passed before a guard opened the door and glared at them before speaking up. State your business, the guard said in a stern tone. The bandit leader coughed before introducing himself and Rostam along with the others. I am but one of Dahak's many, many followers, and I am proud to inform you that I and my crew have successfully captured the fugitive princess and her Gryphon brother, the bandit bragged as he motioned for Nasir to bring the captives closer. Nasir did so, but in order to sell the image well, he had to yank the ropes and leash carrying them, with Rostam doing the same. The guard was surprised to hear this, if his widened eyes were of any indication. I see, he replied after a brief moment of silence. And do you have proof to confirm that they are who you claim to be? Yes, I do, the bandit leader assured him before pulling out a scroll that showed the image of Soraya and Tahir, which happened to match the young woman and Gryphon standing before them. Not just that, I managed to capture a Frumi tribe member, as well as a Sky Nun from the sanctuary itself, the bandit leader declared, which piqued the guard's interest even more. Very well, then, the guard said. I shall speak with the mistress about this recent development. Wait right here. The moment he said this, he slammed the door shut before presumably alerting his mistress about the news, which left the group alone with the bandit leader. So, this is it then? Soraya asked with both hope and worry. We're actually going to find more info about Dahak and use it to our benefit? I believe so, Gordified answered. Plus, we can always use it as an opportunity to destroy one of Dahak's means of support and lessen his grip over Avesta. Well, I'm gonna find an opportunity to sell you out the first chance I get, the bandit leader snarled, causing Rostam to glare at him once more. Do that, and the first thing you lose is your tongue, he threatened, forcing the bandit leader to shut his mouth in both fear and frustration. Just as he did, the guard quickly came back and reopened the door to their surprise, and with a slight nod, he let them in before bringing them to the mistress. The group, led by both the guard and bandit leader, went inside the building, but the moment they did, Soraya and Yasuka immediately became unnerved by what they saw. Inside the mansion was a bunch of lavish furniture and food, presumably prepared by the cooks, which wouldn't have been so bad if not for the unsettling abundance of slaves that were all wearing rags and chains of some kind on their necks and wrists. Some of them looked very thin and weak to the point of having collapsed in exhaustion from overwork, with the unsympathetic guards forcing one of them up, but not before whipping them. Soraya was tempted to stop them, but was restrained by Yasuka, despite also wanting to stop the abuse. The Sky Nun sadly shook her head, as she knew that they couldn't do anything to stop the abuse for now, and had to focus on the mission first. The princess could only look back at the beaten slave before reluctantly walking away, giving a quiet apology to the slave in question. They continued walking while trying not to let the abusive and unsettling atmosphere get to them, especially when they noticed how the palace was getting even darker the more they walked deeper inside. After a few minutes of walking, they finally arrived in the personal quarters of the infamous Mistress Sudabe, if the large amount of guards are of any indication. When the guard leading them to the mistress arrived in front of her quarters, he was immediately gazed down upon by the other guards for bringing the group inside. "Everyone, we have a guest here who wishes to speak to the mistress," the guard explained. "This bandit claims to have found the lost princess of Bahar and her brother, the Gryphon prince, the ones Lord Dahak has been looking for." At first, the guards were skeptical as to whether he was telling the truth, even if Soraya and Tahir did match the description shown on the wanted posters set up by Dahak and his cronies, until they heard a calm yet eerily seductive tone coming from behind closed doors. "Let them in," the voice said. "I wish to see the ones captured by the bandit leader and his crew." "Yes, mistress," the guards obeyed, as they stepped out of the group's way and opened the doors. The minute the doors opened, they were greeted to the sight of a beautiful woman wearing a rather gorgeous dress of many different colors, but mostly in red, blue, and purple. She also wore what appeared to be a crown of sorts that was decorated in luxurious jewels, which seemed to reflect the many different kinds of luxury items surrounding her. A throne of gold and silk, reclining sofas with what appeared to be fur and more silk, various incense burners that gave off a rather strong yet fragrant smell, which would have been pleasing if not for the fact that a seductress was standing before them. Worse, there were more slaves that were present within the lavish room, desperately trying to keep it clean so as to not suffer any more abuse if the terrified expressions on their faces were of any indication. Sudabe glanced at the group standing before her, silently analyzing them, which unnerved the group even more. Yasuka began to tremble from Sudabe's gaze alone, which seemed to amuse the bewitching woman, prompting Soraya and Gryphon to subtly defend her by standing in front of the Sky Nun protectively while glaring at the mistress in defiance. However, what nobody seemed to notice was Rostam staring at Sudabe in shock, if not horror, if the widened eyes and gaping mouth were of any indication. Nasir quickly took notice of the wild man's fear and became concerned, but before either of them could say anything, Sudabe spoke up once more. Yes, these are the princess and the Gryphon we've been looking for these past few months," Sudabe confirmed with a rather creepy grin. "Princess Soraya and Prince Tahir. I've always wondered what they will be like in person." "So you must be Sudabe, the mistress?" Soraya asked tensely, to which Sudabe nodded in confirmation. "The one and only," Sudabe replied in a rather smug tone. "I am the one in charge of servicing Lord Dahak himself and providing him with information of his enemy's whereabouts. Seeing you delivered to my front doorstep was not something I'd anticipated, but it is a welcome surprise, especially given how exhausting it has been trying to find you and your allies." "What do you plan on doing next?" Gryphon demanded. "You have us now. What do you plan on doing after that?" "Well, the first thing I'll need to do is inform Dahak of your unexpected arrivals, and perhaps bring you back to Bahar so you can finally be executed once and for all," Sudabe revealed. "That way the prophecy won't ever come true, and we can crush the rest of the rebels, such as the Frumi tribe and Sky Monks once and for all. Simple as that." "I'm surprised you could say that so easily and with such callousness," Tahir muttered in disgust. "It's simply business for me," Sudabe claimed with a nonchalant shrug. "A business that has benefited me thus far, especially after Dahak took over most of Avesta." And that includes selling people into slavery, even if they're women or even children? Soraya asked in a cold tone. Sudaba merely laughed in response before giving her answer. Why not? Everyone needs to work and do their duty in this world, whether they like it or not, Sudaba said in a mocking tone. Women are expected to please men, and children have to work lest they grow up to be lazy bums all the time. Funny how you're saying this when you're not even lifting a finger to work, let alone serve the very men you seduce, Gryphon pointed out. You don't even follow your own doctrine. True, but that's only because I am better than all those other women in the world, Sudaba claimed in a dismissive tone. I used to be the princess of a kingdom called Hamavaran until Dahak showed up and demanded my father's surrender. Of course, given how my father, King Duladar, was a stubborn old fool and not one to give up his power so much, I decided to aid the serpent sorcerer by putting my father out of his misery before surrendering my kingdom to him. So you betrayed your own people and murdered your father just to save yourself? Soraya asked in horror. To be honest, I had no particular loyalty to my kingdom in the first place, Sudaba revealed in yet another callous tone. He wouldn't let me have the crown due to me being a woman, and he was getting old, so really I did everyone a favor by getting rid of him. You ungrateful bitch, Soraya cursed, completely livid at what she was hearing. How could you do something so heartless? You had a good life and a good family, yet you threw it all away for the sake of helping someone like Doc. Have you no shame for your actions? As she asked her this, she began to thrash against her bindings, given how she was seconds away from strangling the devilish woman. The bandit leader had to restrain her, with even Gryphon and Yasuka worried that Sudaba would try to use this as an excuse to kill the princess. However, Sudaba seemed more amused by this outburst, as she once again laughed in a mocking manner before speaking up once more. You four, do you mind if I speak to the princess and her female companions for a bit? Sudaba asked the bandit leader, Nasir, Rostam, and Tahir. Whereas the bandit leader was more than willing to follow her request, the latter three were more reluctant and concerned over what Sudaba had planned for the ladies. And may I ask why? Nasir asked with concern. I just need to get some information out of them, that's all, Sudaba revealed. Information that is on a need-to-know basis, and one that you don't need to know. I'm not leaving you alone with that witch, Tahir growled, only for Rostam to stop him. Stop, Tahir, Rostam pleaded in a surprisingly fearful tone. We need to go now, please. And seeing the fearful and terrified expression on Rostam's face surprised Tahir, and while it did make him concerned for the usually cheerful and boisterous man, he was still hesitant to leave his sister Yasuka and Gryphon with someone like Sudaba. It also didn't help that there were guards inside the room as well as outside, thus making any chance of rescuing them from harm a lot more difficult, if not risky. But when Soraya gave a silent nod of assurance while also non-verbally telling Tahir and the others to leave so as to not anger Sudaba or blow their cover, Tahir reluctantly did so and left the room with the other men. The moment they did, Sudaba proceeded to give a rather ominous glare towards the three women. The slaves who were nearby backed away slowly out of fear, whereas the guards got closer so no one could escape her sight. Alright, let's get this over with, shall we? Sudaba said in a much colder tone. Where is the location of the Frumi tribe base, along with the Sky Monk Sanctuary? I know you know their locations, given your close alliance with both the Frumi tribe member and Sky Nun here. Tell me where they are, and maybe I'll put in a good word for Dahak to not kill you and your brother. What will you do to us if I do tell you? Soraya asked, prompting Yasuka and Gryphon to glance at her with worry. I'll simply keep you and your brother around as slaves for Dahak to use, Sudaba said in an eerily casual manner. I mean, it's a better option than outright dying. Then you're even more insane than I thought if you think I'm going to give up my dignity and integrity to spare myself and my brother by betraying everyone else, Soraya said in a defiant tone. My answer is no, and that's final! Gryphon grinned with respect and approval, whereas Yasuka was both relieved and proud to see that Soraya was still her plucky yet heroic self, who would never think of selling out her friends and family just to protect herself. Sudaba scowled before snapping her fingers, prompting the guards to grab the girls and force them onto the ground. The ladies desperately tried to escape before Sudaba brought out a curved dagger that was black as night and had an ominous edge to it. She placed the tip at Soraya's chin as the princess was restrained by the guards before glaring at her coldly. I'm sorry, but that wasn't a request, it was an order. Tell us where they are, or else I will subject you to the worst forms of torture before you die, Surabaya warned. Do your worst, you treacherous hag, Soraya insulted. I am not going to be some sellout like you were to your kingdom. Very well then, Surabaya replied before turning to her guards. Strip her of her garments now. What? Soraya and Gordafari cried out in shock. You wouldn't! Yasuka cried out in horror. I will if I must, Surabaya replied back. Make sure she doesn't have any form of clothing on her by the time you're done. No, stop! Get away from me! Soraya shouted as she tried to wrench herself away from the tight grip the guards had on her. Get away from her! Gordafari shouted as she yanked her arm away before punching one of the guards and preparing to attack the ones holding Soraya down. No! Yasuka shouted as she used her wind powers to blow the guards away in an attempt at rescuing Soraya. The three ladies quickly found themselves surrounded by angry guards and prepared to fight until Soraya stopped in her tracks when she heard a familiar bark. She turned around and was greeted to the sight of a familiar-looking canine who was trapped in a very tight and horrible cage, despite the fur being all dirty and messed up, along with having what appeared to be injuries on its body. Soraya could easily recognize that dog anywhere. Marosh? She asked in a hushed tone. Is that you? The moment the disheveled dog glanced at her straight in the eye, she immediately started barking in what appeared to be happiness at seeing her owner once again. Marosh! Soraya exclaimed as she was about to run to her when she saw Surabaya holding her dagger close to the dog, who growled at the mistress with hostility. If you don't want your precious dog to get cut into pieces by me, you will do as I say, she warned. Let her go! Soraya demanded, eyes blazing with fury. Yasuka tried to blow Surabaya away from the dog, only for a div to suddenly barge into the room due to it being dark enough for it to keep existing, despite it being daytime. A div? Here! Gordafari exclaimed as she tried to fight the monster protecting the wicked seductress, along with her equally perverse guards. What? Did you really think I wouldn't have a div by my side at all times? Surabaya asked with a cruel smirk on her face. Don't be so naive. Get away from my dog! Soraya shouted as she attacked Surabaya, only to get thrown back by the div using its large hand. She crashed into the wall painfully, but before she could get back up, she found herself being pinned down on the ground by more heavily armed guards, though she was able to fight back by kicking one of them in the crotch. Unfortunately, they were too heavy for her to fight back compared to the bandits before, especially when they began stripping off her clothes for real, leaving her half exposed. Soraya, hang in there! Yasuka cried out as she tried to fight the div and Surabaya, only for the div to keep blocking her attacks thanks to its dark and demonic abilities. Get away from her, you grapes! Gordafari shouted as she punched some of them and bashed the others onto the furniture. Careful, those were expensive! Surabaya shouted in annoyance while Gordafari ignored her complaints. Meanwhile, the bandit leader and the other men were led to a private room to await further instructions by the guard, though Tahir, Nasir, and Rostam were still worried about the girl's safety. Rostam in particular had a rather shell-shocked expression on his face the entire time, which made both Tahir and Nasir greatly concerned for him. Hey, Rostam, are you okay? Nasir asked with concern. Why were you so freaked out earlier? That voice. That woman, Rostam said nervously. She was there. Wait, what do you mean she was there? Tahir asked in confusion. There for what? She was there the night when my parents and entire tribe were killed off, Rostam revealed with both fury and fear. She was the one who convinced the people who took me in to sell me out to her so they could collect the reward money. What? Nasir exclaimed, albeit in a hushed tone. Are you serious? Tahir asked with worry. There's no doubt about it, Rostam confirmed with a shaky nod. The moment I heard her speak, I was stunned by how similar it was to the mysterious woman who convinced my previous host to sell me at the Dahak. It wasn't until I saw her in person and heard about what she did to her father did I realize who she was. She's the reason why I couldn't be around other people for years, and why I had to run away in the forest thanks to my status as a Rumi tribe member. Hold on a second. You're a member of the Rumi tribe? The bandit leader asked with shock, causing the other three to slowly turn towards him. They were so caught up in their conversation that they completely forgot that he was still there. Judging from the manic and twisted grin on his face, they instantly knew that whatever he had planned wouldn't be good. So you were a member of the Rumi tribe and an additional enemy of Mr. Sudebe? Oh, this is just too good. Wait till I tell her about this. You will not be telling her anything, Tahir growled as he approached the opportunistic bandit. Unfortunately, the bandit was too excited and smug to be afraid of him as he started cackling before running towards the doors, which prompted Tahir, Nasir, and Rostam to dogpile him. Of course, this didn't stop the bandit from calling out for the guards to help him. Guards! Guards! I'm being attacked by the rebels! He shouted, causing the guards to barge into the room and attack the heroes. Pretty soon, it became a free-for-all, with Tahir bashing his body against the guards, especially when the bandit leader wriggled himself out of the dog pile before escaping. Don't worry, Tahir! Just get to him already! We'll deal with these guys! Nasir encouraged, with Rostam already wrestling with one of the guards. Tahir nodded in thanks before chasing after the bandit leader, who tried to rat them out and reveal everything he knew about Rostam's true identity and the location of the secret base. Mr. Sudebe, I have more news to report! One of my men is the last Rumi tribe member, and it's concerning with the Frumi tribe! He shouted as he banged on the door to be let in. But that's not all. I know what a secret rebel base is. It's an— Oh no, you don't! Tahir shouted as he pounced on the bandit leader and pinned him to the ground before crushing his head using his claws. But his relief was short-lived as he heard the cries of his sister from inside Sudebe's room. No, please! Get your hands off me! Help! Soraya! Tahir shouted as he used his Gryphon strength to break through the door, only to be greeted to a rather horrific and messy sight. The moment he returned to the room where Soraya, Yasuka, and Gordafarid were, his heart dropped to his stomach as he witnessed Soraya getting beaten to a pulp and forcibly stripped of her dress by the guards under Sudebe's orders. As for Yasuka, she was currently being strangled by the thief before her, while Gordafarid was pinned to the ground by the same monster. The moment he saw this, his vision turned blood red with fury before letting out a roar of rage. Get away from her! Tahir pounced on the guards who were assaulting his sister and tore them to shreds, blood, flesh, and guts spilling everywhere. The screams of the guards and slaves present were heard, though Tahir only targeted the guards who dared to touch his sister like that and shame her. Whether they did force themselves onto her or not was anyone's guess at this point, but he did not wish to leave them unpunished after disgracing his sister like that. When all the guards were being annihilated by the furious Gryphon, Yasuka took this as a chance to use some of the sharpened wind she had and sliced at the deep, which left a nasty scar on the monster's arm and distracted enough for Gordafarid to grab her knife that she hid underneath her skirt to stab it hard enough for it to howl in agony. Gordafarid then threw the knife at the thief's eye, causing it to back into a wall where Sudebe happened to be. Idiot! Where are you? She cried out, only to get crushed against the wall and yelped with pain as she was knocked out from the impact. Of course, the thief continued to attack Gordafarid and Yasuka, only for Tahir to lunge at it in fury, clawing and biting at it the entire time. Soraya, are you okay? Yasuka asked the injured princess, who could barely respond due to the amount of pain she was experiencing. Hey, you still with us? Gordafarid asked with worry, especially when she saw Soraya's forehead begin to bleed from the impact. Oh no, the warrior woman was forced to tear a part of her skirt to wrap Soraya's bleeding forehead right as more guards showed up with weapons in hand. However, before anyone could start another fight, a loud crash occurred from the ceiling, which damaged parts of the building, with some of the people inside having to dodge the rubble. The sunlight was enough to make the thief hiss in agony and shake off Tahir due to it being a nocturnal creature as it desperately tried to hide in the shadows. However, Feridun didn't give it a chance to escape as he roared before burning the monster alive. Feridun! Yasuka and Gordafarid shouted in surprise and relief. About damn time you showed up! Where were you? Nasir demanded as he and Rostam made sure to protect the slaves who nearly got crushed by the debris. Sorry, I had to bring the tribe members that I spoke of earlier here, Feridun apologized. The minute he said this, a bunch of snake-like humans started slithering their way into the now damaged mansion, strangling and poisoning the guards with their tails and fangs. One of the snake people happened to be the woman named Manasa, who quickly approached the injured Soraya with worry. Though her serpentine form did unnerve Yasuka and Gordafaried at first. Their worries were lessened when the snake woman spoke. Is she alright? Manasa asked with worry. She's still recovering from her wounds, Yasuka explained. We need to get her out of here now! Soraya! Tahir shouted as he approached his sister with fear. The last thing Soraya saw was her brother panicking over the injured state she was in. It didn't help that the blood on her face and eyes muddled her vision even more, making it difficult to focus on her surroundings. She could barely move or speak due to the pain she sustained from her injuries, but there was one thing on her mind when she saw her brother's worried face. Here. After that, everything went black.